Hi guys, how's it? We're in the next part, so I'm gonna try and be a little bit more serious in this part because I was all jokey in the previous one. This is quite a serious matter. I wore lipstick. Hello. Like it? Dig it? Yes. It'll make me feel a little bit better when I review my content because then I might just feel like I'm not so nasty or ugly. Given the fact that people keep treating me like I'm nasty or ugly, and even if I was, really nobody deserves to be treated this way. Anywho and anyhow, I'm struggling these days to rock up and talk looking better than this because my life is just so rough. I'm not even wearing my wigs anymore. I'm just cooking it up a storm in the kingdom of heaven meals without really trying, but it helps that I've got makeup apps. So in the previous parts I was quite jocose. I don't want to make this too many parts really because Lord knows I can speak. Y'all know I've had like 45 part series, so we're not gonna do that. This whole series, I figured if I'm gonna survive my own sorrow, I gotta talk through it. That's always been what helps me. Is dedicated to helping people survive death curses. Having given you the backstory in part 1, I just want to reiterate a little bit, refresh it in your memories, just in case you didn't see part 1. In 2014, prior to getting slapped silly with this level of insanity against my life, I had a regular, thriving life of a person that was like facing a really great future. And then one day I was just thrown into so much obscurity and it all happened so quickly. And the only way that I could use metaphorically language to map to what happened to me would be the tantamount of suddenly being thrown into a war zone when yesterday everything was okay. It is very similar to that time in Bosnia during the war that got so many Bosnian women raped by war criminals who impregnated some of them, the women of which did not even know who their baby daddies were because they got repeatedly raped by so many different men. And it was during that time that, I don't know if it's definitely Amnesty International decided to declare rape a crime, a war crime, a crime against humanity. Yeah, so yesterday, the day before the war commenced, those women had thriving regular lives, going to the store, buying food, to the market, buying fruits and vegetables, coming back. And the next day, they were baby mamas of children belonging to rapists. They were dead. Their husbands were massacred. They were just thrown into war overnight. It is similar in my life to also the Rwandan genocide. If you have read up on the Rwandan genocide or watched a movie of sorts about you will know that during it, the Houthis that decided to go crazy against the Tutsis just butchered people. It was a 3-month massacre that killed, I stand corrected as to what the number is, but I believe ran into the either tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Tutsi Rwandan citizens. A tribal war, basically, that chopped the heads off dads, sons, like no discretion as to the age of the human beings. Rape of women, of course, was also a thing. Butchering, massacring, disembodying, leaving bodies on the street. Just a terrible time. Where just day before yesterday, they were good. Just day before yesterday, they were alright. There is a woman whose story, with the whole Rwandan genocide, who gave her testimony that her uncle was a Houthi, and her aunt, who married her aunt who was a Tutsi, and he killed her. He killed his wife over this tribal war. But prior to the war, they were married and they were what appeared to be happy. You know, that's what indoctrination does to people. That's why some kids, join Islamist extreme groups, and then next thing they're happy to bomb their own cities. They're happy to kill their own family members in the name of Allah. It is a demonic possession that overcomes people, that makes them do irrational things that they can't understand. Frankly, the woke mob in the US is similar to that. There is a story I watched online of a young woman whose father passed away. She's a mixed girl. Mom black, dad white. And she's been made so woke that she hated her dad, who was white. Calling him a misogynist, calling him a Trump lover, calling him at his funeral. Like, this is the speech that she made at her dad's funeral. Calling him just an unacceptable cisgender white supremacist male that she is frankly emotionless concerning the death of. And she did the speech at his funeral, and there are people who actually applauded her in the hall. Yeah, this man raised this daughter. She even prided herself in the fact that she was going to take his money and use it to fund woke causes. This is obviously a young woman whose dad at some point doted over her, and yet she has a violent case of amnesia about that. What causes a person to be that far gone in indoctrination? That is what it is, that when you push down a particular narrative in a person's environment or ecosystem, or in a people group's environment or ecosystem, what ultimately becomes of them? They walk in groupthink that is incredibly demonic. It is charged like atoms, and they will spur in one another so much hatred against what it is that is the subject or object of their hatred, until it becomes justifiable even to make a speech like that at your own dad's funeral. Yeah, so I guess it makes sense how it is that Houthi man was able to kill his Tuti wife, when at some point he probably doted over her, lovingly pursued her to a point of getting down on one knee and proposing marriage, or whatever would be the tantamount of that in Rwandan culture. Yeah, something like that happened to me, where there was a cultural shift that happened in the spirit realm that caused a great amount of groupthink in my land. And it created so much hatred and animosity against true Christians that they were able to easily just take one of their own and put them at death's door. And for over a decade, for almost a decade now, since 2014, it's going to be 9 years this year, they have just gazed upon this travesty and done absolutely nothing. It is a demonic groupthink that can also account for how it is that people end up taking in their drones the mark of the beast and gazing upon the beheadings of their own family members who choose not to take it. Being dimbimbi, spies against their own family members, handing their moms and dads over to be killed, their own sons and daughters. If the devil could achieve that level of mindlessness, mindless drones in people, in a state of groupthink that is obviously demonically charged to a point of hypnosis, if he can do it before the restrainer is gone, before the rapture happens, if he can do it before the Lord has officially poured out his wrath on the earth through the Great Tribulation by opening the first seal, and then etc., how much worse will it be then when the restrainer is gone? How much worse will it be when the rapture has happened? This started in 2014, and things were not even that bad back then. The world disease had not yet encapsulated everybody, and so therefore the general global megalomaniacalism had yet to commence, and South Africa was already in that level of groupthink. My own friends and my own family members literally caused me to be devoured by whatever beast, whatever predator was prowling in the streets now. A nation handed over to its reprobate mind. I was shocked initially, and by initially I mean the first few years, following which I then started to employ a strategy to survive the fact that everyone is dead. There is this menacing show on Netflix by the name of All of Us is Dead. It is a South Korean production. And in that show, everybody in a high school basically becomes a zombie because of some virus that escapes a laboratory. And these kids turn into these menacing zombies that are fast-paced and unconquerable. And they take over an entire school. Ultimately, I believe it becomes an entire neighborhood. This All of Us Are Dead show is literally what happened in my life overnight. And what I am are the few children in that show that survived the outbreak. The small handful that survived it, enough to not get converted into zombies, but they watched every last schoolmate and teacher get converted into zombies. Everyone in the school became zombies. The kids that survived had to hide in classrooms where they had no food, and in order to go and get food and survive and basically send out an SOS for help, they had to risk their lives traveling through hallways of the school, hoping to not trigger or alarm one of the zombie kids, because you alarm one, you alarm them all. You alarm one, you get a whole stampede of them coming at you. There were, like as with any such show, just a handful of survivors that made it. And I feel like I am one of them. As just one, because it broke out everywhere in my life. In my organization, company where I worked, in my school, university where I studied, in my neighborhood where I stayed, like literally in the apartment building where I used to stay with a landlord that had no contact to my relatives mistreating me. It broke out amidst, did I mention family members? It broke out in complete strangers. Everywhere I went, it's like they kept on getting turned. It was a disease that was ubiquitously spreading in the nation, and there was nothing here to stop it. And now it is 2023, and it appears everyone is so dead that the site now, that is South Africa, has got to be quarantined because it is no longer habitable at all by citizens. You know, Hollywood has a thing about predictive programming, and I can't say this enough, guys. if you do not pay attention to what's going on in the media, and you know, I think it's one of the biggest reasons why I still watch Netflix. Even though some days I feel convicted that I need to stop because it's a lot of rubbish a lot of times that can kind of tarnish your spirit, right? So I'm without excuse, but even with this lack of excuse that I have, I still pick up on things that are just evolving in these shows. And the transition to exorbitant darkness is so sudden and over just one season that for me it's like, how can this global disease not be caught onto? How do people not spot or identify it? Like, for instance, there is this show on Netflix that I'm watching currently that I want to stop watching it because it's just becoming increasingly grieving, called Blacklist. Blacklist is a show about a criminal by the name of Raymond Reddington who makes a deal with the FBI in order to expose basically the crime syndicate of America or the world at large, to help the FBI catch them in exchange for his own immunity. And the first season of Blacklist you can take in your stride, right? I am currently on season, I don't know, is it 7 or 8 or whatever, I think it's 7. And good people in the show, or what would be the tantamount of good by human terms. I even spoke about this in one of my previous series concerning the last show that I watched on Netflix, which was called Designated Survivor. I always choose my shows based on there being no foul language, based on there being no sex. It is hard to avoid the violence, right? Just like Designated Survivor, it starts out really palatable and you can take it in your stride. And then they get to the final season. Designated Survivor had 4 seasons. Blacklist, I don't know how many they have, but I'm currently on 7 or 8. And the darkening of human beings in the show, the infiltration of the woke ideology in the show, it's just in your face. All of these shows, the first season was shot. The first seasons were recorded in around 2017, 18, maybe 16. And there is still sobriety in America. There is still acknowledgement of the genders. There is still a predominantly heterosexual theme in romance in the shows. And just somewhere between 2017 and, I don't know, 19, maybe 20, all of a sudden, shows that were palatable, consumable, because they were better than the rest. All these licentious shows are very grieving. All these profanity-fueled shows are grieving. So if you can escape an expletive, you can still consume some pretty decent entertainment as a Christian and not be grieved. But all these shows, even when they still avoid expletives, so foul language, because that's the theme of their show, just the things that happen in there. And in Designated Survivor, there was all of a sudden the colorful agenda that infiltrated. And the young girl became dark. Like, good characters, by the standards of human beings, suddenly become dark, and they're crass, and they're rebellious, they're recalcitrant, they are disrespectful, and it is glorified. It is glorified instead of rebuked. Why would a country want to do that to itself? However, it is not just America that's doing this. I've watched the only shows that have maintained some kind of sobriety in terms of theme are Asian ones, like South Korea. And to this day, in South Korea, feminism is frowned upon. The colorful agenda is frowned upon, etc. Right? So South Korean shows tend to stay in their lane from first season to the very last. But European shows, even if it's non-English European countries where you have to read subtitles or they have got a voiceover that is speaking in the English language, they always from when the show's initial seasons are good, they're cool to consume, but then from the time that these shows are recording in 2019, 2021, all of them inevitably bring a woke ideology, all of them, inevitably. And the good characters in the show, they start to become really evil. In Designated Survivor, the little girl started to use foul language, and she has such a pompous attitude, and she was yet to even turn 13 in the show. When the show started, she was just a toddler. And by the last season, she was only 13 or 12 years old. And yes, she was using foul language and disrespecting her dad. I could not understand what in the world was going on. They then also brought in a show that had absolutely no sex scenes in it at all. That's why I chose it. They then brought in a gay sex scene. I was like, I chose this show based on there being no nudity, no sex, and no foul language. At most, I will take violence because there are guns blazing and bombs landing. But I cannot take these 3. I chose this show for those reasons. And so if I'm watching from season 1, there's going to be a longing inside me to get all the way to the end to see how this plot unravels. And you trap me, you hook me with the fact that I have seen what happens in season 1, 2, and 3. So just to see how it all ends. You will force me to go, like, literally watch a sex scene between two men. You will force me to listen to a 13-year-old girl speak to a dad like he is the bubblegum underneath her feet. You will force me to listen to a person that used to have normal language on their tongue suddenly use all these expletives. You will force me to also watch a person that was normal in the way that they thought suddenly start to refer to people as they, them, as opposed to he or she. And I was like, this is hard. Emily in Designated Survivor was a good girl in the beginning, and she ended up corrupt. So too did the little girl. So too did the president start taking a whole bunch of nonsense in his stride. And I was so grieved by the end of it all. I wished I hadn't finished to the end, but the thing that made me linger all the way to the end was the fact that they hooked me with the innocence in the beginning. So I just had to see how it ended. Designated Survivor's not the only one. Like I said, Blacklist. Elizabeth Keane was a good girl that, had this dad or non-dad figure that was a criminal. And for me, the most disappointing thing about Blacklist is Elizabeth Keane becoming a criminal. It just does not ever work out. And the amount of leg room that is availed to the FBI to sin or to commit crimes to serve the needs of a corrupt agent that has obviously apostatized from what was her original position. The fact that they keep on covering her back, for me, says, how are we glamorizing this or glorifying it? Because in the real world, what normal people would do if one of their agents went corrupt, they would, much to their sorrow, probably call her out. And yet these shows are glamorizing acceptance of crimes or acceptance of moral degradation or degeneration, insofar as it is an initially favored human being that is walking in this way. No wonder then, therefore, celebrities are so well used in order to indoctrinate everybody, because they are very typically in the entertainment industry when they commence their careers such sweethearts at first. They are such sweethearts at first. Look at Rihanna, look at Beyonce, Jennifer Lopez. Look at, Christina Aguilera is not still very active, but let's use someone that is not necessarily a musician or, Whoopi Goldberg, right? It is all these people that start out such darlings, and the shows that they do, the movies that they act in, you will just love them. And then later on, they become incredibly nefarious. And just like the movie, or not the movie, sorry, but the series Designated Survivor, where you want to see how it ends, you just keep following them anyway. You just keep following them anyway, even though they have become really nefarious, really evil. Even though their music videos have just become flat out unacceptable. Even though there is so much satanic symbolism in their music videos. Now, goodness gracious, I'm a genie in a bottle, Christina Aguilera, then it's dirty. Rihanna, give me any of her earlier songs, Never Ever Gonna Let You Go. You go from that, and then, there was a music video where Rihanna was basically just kind of naked, and there was some lady hanging, dying on some rope with her breasts showing to everybody. And if you were watching MTV Uncensored, you would see everything. And she was busy saying, better have my money, or something. Yeah, that one, yeah, the B word, better have my money. And it's it's hard to let them go, because you develop affections for them when they're still new in the industry. They're such darlings. They're so sweet. They're coy. They're innocent. Beyonce and her Destiny's Child's fellow musicians, remember that song that they did? Nasty, put some clothes on, I told ya. Don't walk out the house without your clothes on, I told ya. And now she's busy telling church girls to drop it like a thotty. She's the nasty girl that we used to think, back when we were coming on the come up, we used to be like, at least Beyonce understands that to get butt naked is not how to become a celebrity. We respected her and all of Destiny's Child for basically doing a song about scantily clad ladies in the street. Nasty, put some clothes on, I told ya. Don't walk out that house without your clothes on. You nasty girl, you classless, you freaky, you trashy girl. Remember that song? And then Beyonce gets naked on stage, does silhouettes on stage where she's obviously wearing nothing. And she is also chilling on a piano, purring like a cat, wearing a G-string, a thong, where we can see half her behind in 1+1. And this is now what is acceptable for a woman who made us initially buy her albums when she was still calling nasty out. And now she is nasty. But because we loved her so much in the beginning, because we developed affections for her so much in the beginning, now today we are still following her basically into the flames of hell. It is a satanic strategy where, frankly, the earth, we grow up with people, we love them. We get to know them as certain ways. And those initial affections that we have for them, when then their character starts to become incredibly questionable, we still stick with them. Even now that they are basically doing a music video on a pentagram. Even now, they're busy swearing at Jesus in a music video, speaking about how it is that they're using his word as menstruation pads. Where prior to that, you sang a song with your colleague Michelle, when Jesus says yes, nobody can say no. And then you use his word as a tampon. How hard it is to let go. Michelle herself stood for Beyonce when she was being called out for her evil practices because Michelle grew up with Beyonce. They came up together in the, once Michelle joined Destiny's Child, and now she cannot unlove her. She cannot, as a professing Christian that does gospel music, unlove Beyonce. Neither can many of us who came up with Beyonce when we were still teenagers. So hard it is for us to let her go, because that's just what affection does. When you love a person, even in your own household, never mind them being a celebrity, when they go awry, you protect them. The devil has been observing this. He's an ancient spirit. He's incredibly smart. Have you seen how family members of serial killers still stand by their serial killer son or daughter or uncle or aunt when the trial is being run? They're still so supportive. They don't understand why everybody doesn't get them. Pablo Escobar's mom does not count because she was basically an accomplice or an accessory of sorts, right? But think Nandipa Magudumela, however you pronounce her surname, and the whole Thabo Besta thing. Her family are still standing so fast and strong by her, even though she's committed all of these atrocities. We loved her as Dr. Nandipa, and now she is what she is, and her family still stick by her. What did that? It's love. Whether or not she's innocent. Imagine finding out that your dad is a child molester, and you still stand by him in court. Only a social worker, perhaps, that works in a children's shelter, and yet you will stand by this child molesting dad because he did not molest you. Nandipa as well is a woman living in a country where there is a very bad case of gender-based violence. Women are being butchered, whose body parts disembodied are being left in duffel bags on sides of streets. That is a South African pandemic. In terms of the crimes against women, there is a bad case of rape as well. Bad case of sexual harassment of females everywhere we go. It's really horrible in this land. Nandipa, being a doctor, ought know better. Heck, she's dealt with cadavers, likely even done a rape kit on a woman. Fine, she was a dermatologist, but first you gotta do a residency in an actual hospital before you can specialize in any field of medicine. So I bet she's seen some battered women in her life. And yet, this woman fled the country and became a fugitive with a sexual predator. Thabo Besta was and is a sexual predator. And here it is that this female doctor ran off with him and disregarded her own apprehension about the fact that she was in love with a man who had violated other women's bodies, albeit not having violated hers. Nandipa knew Thabo from when she was still at Wits University. She knew him when she was still a kid, when she was still on the come up. She knew what she would imagine a better side of him, and because she had gotten to fall in love with him from that early on, before he likely committed all of his atrocities, when he then went dark, she just could not divorce the former self that he walked in and the one that is now demon-possessed, raping women all over the show and killing them. His criminal's name is the Facebook rapist. He raped these women after having met them online, claiming to want to introduce them into the modeling industry or whatever. Like, your man becomes a sexual predator and you break him out of prison and become a little bit of a Bonnie to that Clyde. It is crazy. You can't even fathom it, but there was something that must have happened to basically rub off the demonic possession of Thabo Besta on Nandipa. It's almost as if though they get the person that is beloved to become so menacing that he will brush off or rub off, or she will rub off on those that are besotted with them. So the dad that is a child molester rubs off on the daughter that never experienced a child molestation, even though he molested the next door neighbor's kid. The man that rapes 10 other women but then does not rape his own wife rubs off on the wife to a point where the wife will support him. The mother whose son is a serial killer, the son rubs off on the mom, such that the mom will now protect the son no matter what, including his moral character. So therefore, when then you stand with a fugitive, the Bible says that do not help a person that is running away from justice, because then you will become a fugitive for life. So the mother that helps the son get away with murder, in and of herself, must then of course get indwelt by some demon when she refuses to call a spade a spade. When she refuses to make it clear that my son is an abomination in my sight because I didn't raise him like that. When the mother is supportive and continues to punt the innocence of her son, despite the exculpatory evidence showing that the son is guilty. The mother on that day, it's almost as though she is opening a grave in her own heart to invite the demons that have indwelt the son. So I guess the devil infects the whole world that way. So through the entertainment industry, the whole world is made to fall in love with coy, dainty, quaint, cute, adorable, sweet celebrities that become menacing later on. And so therefore everybody else then gets, what is this? Like, have you ever inhaled pepper when you're busy sprinkling it on your salad? Gets in your nose and you start to sneeze. Everybody starts to sneeze. Everybody catches this pathogen in the sky. Everybody then ends up becoming, ever so slightly whatever it is that Beyonce is, because they love Beyonce so much. When you stand with sin, when you don't call a fugitive what it is that they are, and when you don't call them out, when you don't cause the discipline to come on the head of this fugitive, in and of yourself, you become a fugitive for life. So they intoxicate the planet with their sin by causing first you to fall in love with someone that was initially innocent that then becomes wicked. But are human beings really that smart, that wise, that antichrist to just desire that level of moral degradation without them being fettered? Frankly, I don't think so. We are an intelligent race, but there is a race of beings that are wiser and more intelligent than us. And they are fallen angels. They are disembodied entities that are floating around. They are spirits that have got a wealth of knowledge that we don't have, to a point of having psychological tools that in their possession to basically run an entire human race through influence. And they know how to employ a strategy in the human race to cause them to implode, to head towards entropy, to basically start to die. They know how to cause an incredible defeatism in society. When you tarnish the moral character of society through a beloved celebrity that goes dark, you mess with the youth, you make them more violent, you mess with your country. You create an insane ecosystem. So therefore, as the human race, given that we are born by God naturally to be self-preserving, that very self-destructive grain that we are on must therefore not be of us. We are therefore possessed as a collective. And in being collectively possessed, are in dire need of intervention by those who aren't possessed. And they are few in number in comparison to everybody else that is possessed. And they're about to be taken out the way. They're the restrainer. They are indwelt by Him who is holy. They are indwelt by the Holy Spirit. And they are trying to stay the continuation of this pathogen spreading all over the show. And in so then resisting it, because they're dealing with people who are demon possessed, being resisted. And the resistance is causing so much persecution of the church, so much persecution of the body of Christ, that the Lord will no longer humor it for much more. The Lord will not merely gaze upon the resistance of His saints to a point where their lives are being made near on impossible to live for much longer. So He is going to take us home, because you demon-possessed human population are making it impossible for Christians to live. You have made it near on impossible for us to live out the rest of our lives on an earth that hates the fact that we are restraining the pathogen that is spreading. We are the thing that is preventing it from finishing its ugly work. And you are insisting we move out the way. So much so that you are slapping us out of the way. You are demonetizing us. You are deplatforming us. You are shadow banning us. You are also sending us a whole chunk of death curses that we might die, take ourselves out, that we might get hit by buses. You want us gone, and so God is going to give you exactly what you want. He's going to take us out. Blacklist. Like I said, Elizabeth Keane goes dark after you fall in love with her innocence, and her darkening character is exorbitantly grieving to one who is indwelt by the Holy Spirit. All I could think about was, why is nobody boycotting Blacklist? Why is nobody walking away from the show because it's no longer entertaining? And then I realized, I guess I reached a eureka, an epiphany moment, where I realized that I'm indwelt by the Holy Spirit. That's why I'm grieved by Elizabeth's darkening condition. But the world is not indwelt by the Holy Spirit, so they're not grieved by it. It is a normal progression for them. It is embraced by them. They have been deceived by the prince of the power of the air, who is the God above all those who are perishing. He has blinded the minds of unbelievers, and they are like mindless drones headed for hellfire in their numbers, and they don't see it in the way that I do. So it is not that I should crease my forehead and be confused as to why nobody else is grieved by Elizabeth Keane's darkening disposition in the show Blacklist. It is not that I ought crease my forehead. It is that I ought rather wag my head and understand that, of course, Blacklist has gotten to season 7 and 8 without people walking away because they are being successfully indoctrinated. They are taking in their stride. Haram all of a sudden speaking about pronouns when he was nowhere near speaking that kind of language in season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And here it is that now he's trying to see if he can call somebody they, lest they should hate being called he or she, or whatever other plethora of apparent pronouns there exist for just two genders of human beings? Why is Haram speaking in pronouns as an Indian man, as an Arabic man? If he's not Indian, he is certainly brown in color. He looks like he reigns from the Middle East. His roots, origins are from there. Why would a man from the Middle East or from India suddenly embrace pronouns? Why would that happen? People that belonged to religious groups that were too extreme to ever embrace the colorful ideology are now actors and actresses in shows, in entertainment industry shows that are pushing a woke ideology. Like I said in my previous pod, there is no longer devout religion in any nation, including my own. There are no devout Muslims in South Africa, but for a small remnant. There are no devout Christians, none that are not severely persecuted, because there is no room for extremity of religion. This one world religion is satanic precisely because it is tending towards worshipping one man, and he is the devil. He is the Antichrist. And the Antichrist wants worship for himself, not to even to any other demon. Whatever demon is spurring the religion of Islam along, that Muslims believe is Allah, the devil does not even want that going to him, to that demon. He wants it to be him. And he will one day indwell a man called the Antichrist and insist that all world religions be decimated and then he be worshipped. Even atheism is going to fly out the window. There is no room for any extreme religion anymore, or any extreme mindset, just one that is tending towards the worship of Satan. And there is a handful, a small little negligible remnant of human beings that see it, but they're so rapidly getting outnumbered that the earth is doing that which is predictable, headed towards entropy. And in this state, headed towards entropy, whatever calamities all over the show, whatever chaos is ensuing all over the show, indeed, entropy is the end result of chaos theory. All that is going to culminate in the extraction of the only sober minds in the room, because it is not safe anymore for us to be here. This whole series is titled How to Escape a Death Curse, because that's all that I have been subjugated to the tyranny of surviving for almost a decade. Almost a decade. I've been surviving death curses. How long do you think the Lord is going to make me fast yet again just to overcome yet another death curse that the occult has sent me? People are going to end up thinking I'm crazy, like the whole world is against me, like everyone is coming for me. People are going to end up speaking of me like I think I'm John Wick, that there was a contract for my assassination, and anyone who's anybody, if they could kill me, then by all means. They're going to be like, who do you think you are, Keanu Reeves? They're going to start listening to my testimony like I'm crazy. This woman keeps on talking about death curses. Come on, girl. The world is not that crazy, except it is. So because my testimony is going to get less and less heard, the Lord is then going to take me out. Let's move to the next part.